All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our ASB webinar, Rise of the Generalists, Why MBAs in Asia Are Best Positioned for Post-COVID Success. This is interesting. I didn't realize I had some scribble on my screen here. We'll take care of that afterwards. But been happy to have this session with you guys, expose you to ASB, talk to you about why we think our program is relevant for what's going on in the world today. My name is Sean Ferguson. I'm Associate Dean here at the Asia School of Business. Holler at me, all right? For those of you guys who want to connect after the call or after the webinar, feel free to scan my LinkedIn QR code. You can shoot me an email. We can schedule a call. Only thing I ask, if you send me a LinkedIn request, let me know you saw the webinar. And that'll help me respond more appropriately to you, all right? Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in higher education for the last 15 years and about equal time spent in the US. I used to work at Rice University, running the MBA programs there, then moved to Hong Kong University of Science and Technology in Hong Kong to oversee their MBA programs. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, I came to ASB. And people say, why'd you come to ASB? Because I felt like ASB had the best product in management education for tomorrow, all right? And so in this session, we'll talk about a little bit about ASB, but we'll focus on the generalists. And then we'll also get into a little bit of how our program, the rise of the generalists in this region, is going to position people best for post-COVID success, all right? But a little bit about ASB. Short and simple, our goal is to be the premier school of management education here in Asia. We want to be recognized for for our ability to develop transformative and principled leaders. But unlike other schools, our mission is really geared towards the advancement of the emerging world and Asia in particular. And so I think that's a quite unique mission, and it stands out in our profession. We're a startup business school that's 5 years old. We had our first class and joined the program in 2016. And we're a partnership between MIT Sloan School of Management and the Central Bank of Malaysia. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out why this yellow squiggly is on here. So I'm just going to do a quick erase job. Let's see. Okay, cool. Sorry for that. So we're a product of MIT Sloan, Central Bank of Malaysia. MIT Sloan provides the academic and programmatic oversight to ensure there's an appropriate level of excellence and rigor that's synonymous with their name. Bank Negara, the Central Bank of Malaysia, provides the resource and infrastructure necessary for us to be a world-class institution. And our hope is to be a talent magnet, drawing a lot of you guys from the different parts of the world, and then a multiplier for this region, right? And so when you think about ASB, we're a global full-time MBA program in the heart of Southeast Asia. Our last 2 classes, we had about 83 students. And typically, we're about 70% international, 43% female. We have students from 5 different continents representing 26 different countries. And so we're a truly global business school on the front line and in the frontier of Asia. When it comes to our working professional program, also we're a very international program. Last year, in 2019, we launched our first cohort, and that program is really designed for high potential working professionals looking to accelerate their career development. We've got students from Germany, Malaysia, Korea, Thailand, and Vietnam. So across the board, high quality, high caliber programs at ASB. The students are one piece, that's kind of the software along with the faculty and the administrative staff, but we also have this physical infrastructure here that I think is second to none. If you look in the lower left corner, what you'll see is a picture of our campus. The white block of buildings on the left are our residential campus, and there we have 4 different blocks where we house our students. We're not nearly at capacity, so we need a bunch of you guys to come and join us next year. At the top right-hand corner, what you'll see is our academic building. Our academic building is, it's almost like the Death Star in keeping with the Star Wars theme of today. And in the left upper corner, what you see is kind of the dramatic, foyer of the building. To give you a sense of this school is about 4 to 6 times bigger than the business school buildings that I've worked at before that were impressive and new as well. And so I think this gives you a sense of our commitment to delivering excellence and preparing students to make the biggest impact possible in Asia. So as we think about the generalists, I want to give you some background about the current landscape in Asia, okay? And so I think everyone is in agreement that Asia is the future of the global economy, but the real question is, will it fulfill its potential? You know, the trends that we're seeing is that the economic gap between the G7 and rich countries and the rest of the world is closing, especially with regards to Asia. As China is moving up the value-added chain and it's becoming more of a service economy, and it's serving more of the internal consumption needs of its consumer base. And what this has done is allow ASEAN to pick up the slack of China's migration up the value-add chain. The other thing that's puts Asia fulfilling its potential at risk is that there's a huge talent deficit in the region. The region needs more world-class talent. I actually did this webinar yesterday as well, and you know, one of the things I used to see when I was working in Hong Kong is that the gravity of China was making it harder for international students to do well in Hong Kong because language, specifically Mandarin, was becoming more and more prevalent and needed to work there. But in Southeast Asia, it's a little bit different, and so I think there's a better opportunity for talent in this part of the world. You know, one of the things that is driving this need is that, you know, if you think about, you know, the workforce, right? There's an aging workforce in a lot of the developed parts of Asia, in Asia Pacific, Australia, China, Japan, Korea. So there's a lack of, you know, talent in those parts of the world because of the workforce and their stage of development. But then there's not enough skill in other parts of the workforce. So if you look at Indonesia, Vietnam, and other Southeast Asian countries, one of the things that's a challenge is that they may be 20 to 30 years away from really having a developed workforce who can deliver that kind of high-skilled talent. And so when we say high-skilled talent, we mean people who can manage, innovate, create, and apply, right? And that's what's really missing in this part of the world. It's not just the execution level, it's the strategic level. Another compounding factor is that we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution, right? And so in Industry 4.0, what you have are smart factories, autonomous systems, Internet of Things, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And so the needs of the workforce are changing with the acceleration of technology. And really COVID is probably, if you listen to any of the popular press or CEOs when they go on CNBC, they're talking about how COVID has accelerated trends by 5 and 10 years in some parts of the world. Another factor that's changing the environment of work in this part of the world is that the average tenure of a job continues to shrink, and then the half-life of skills learned are shrinking, right? So there was this book, The New Culture of Learning. Deloitte cited this in their recent human capital report, that the half-life of a skill is 5 years. And for things that tend to be more on the technical side or related to technology, say something like coding, the half-life of that skill is 18 months. But even a skill that's like not hardcore technology, like programming or something like that, like social media, the trends, usability, the user experience continues to evolve faster and faster. And so it's hard to train people for every case. And so because of these factors, the Internet of Things, the aging, the changing landscape of the workforce, the acceleration of decline of a half-life, what you're finding is the rise of the generalists, right? And so there's too much uncertainty in today's environment to have a one-size-kind-of-fits-all skill set. While companies mostly hire discipline skill for the early stage of the career, if you look at what really happens to someone over the course of their career, almost immediately after the first job, their employees are generally relying on their generalist skills. Also, you know, what the research and literature says is that a single perspective is detrimental to navigate in vague or poorly defined situations. And with the rate of change that we see in the world, every situation is different. And so having a range of perspective and skills is helpful as far as having an individual navigate those situations. And employees skilled in numerous functions, are more valuable. And so as you see what's going on with companies, they're adding more development programs internally so that their workforce can stay current. And the ones who are going to enjoy the most success are people with strong analytical skills, but also these skills being developed via experiences. And these individuals will outperform over time. And so the net of this is that there aren't enough generalists in Asia, and there's a great opportunity for this part of the world. And so what does this have to do with MBAs, right? The MBAs, this is something that's been talked about ever since I've been a student 20 years ago. There were actually articles then that were still saying, is an MBA worth it? Still worth it? Why would you do it? It's not that value add. And, for me, the answer is always, it depends. The school and the nature of the experience is what matters most, right? And so when I first came to Asia in 2013 and I was talking with employers and such, people are saying, oh, we don't need an MBA. We don't value an MBA. They're too expensive, this, that, or the other, right? And I was like, man, coming from the US, the MBA had always been embraced, right? And so I was trying to get to the root of this problem. And, why I was struggling with this problem is that when you look at the salary data for MBAs in Asia and some of the emerging trends related to Asia, there absolutely is a market for MBAs, right, in this part of the world. And what you've seen, these two charts illustrate what's been going on for MBA graduates since 1999 to the most recent MBA rankings. We took data from the Financial Times. And what you'll see in the dotted curve on the slide on your left is the MBA salaries 3 years after graduation, right? And so you notice Asia has the fastest arc, and the salaries now are on par with the US, and they're above Europe when adjusted for purchase power parity. The other thing that you've seen over this period of time is that the number of ranked schools has increased from 2 to 17. And a lot of this has been driven by demand for MBA talent in this part of the world. So when you see the growth in schools, which is equivalent to the growth in students, and then when you also see the rapid rate of increase in salaries, that tells you that there's a strong market. I think one of the things that you'll also see is on the slide on the right, those curves outline the salary increase differential between Asian schools and US and international business schools. And so the gray bar shows that Asian schools outperform international business schools who are mainly European or European schools by 42% in terms of salary increase, and US business schools by 27%. So the opportunity is clearly here, and some of the growth needs will continue on in COVID, right? As the region migrates up, the middle class chain, what you'll see is that people are, the growth agenda is going to continue to be pursued here, whereas in parts of the developed world, some of the investments, may not happen, all right? Now, this chart, showed one view of what's going on in this part of the world. This is another chart that kind of talks about the annual increase, right, in salaries. And so, whenever you see high salary growth rates, right, that's a sign that there's a scarcity of talent in the market, right? And then also, the high performance drives the premium for top MBA programs. So in addition to the analysis we did on the prior slide, we looked at what is the annual salary growth rates for students from working professional programs and full-time MBA programs. And if you look on this, Asia, whether you're a working professional or a full-time MBA student, is vastly outperforming. For the working professional program, 7 out of the top 10 programs are in Asia. The rate of salary progression for working professionals are actually faster than full-time MBA programs. And one of the reasons that is because there's a kind of hard reset when you go to a full-time MBA program, whereas someone in a working professional program is staying with their employer. The MBAs are vastly outperforming Europe and Asia, Europe and the USA. And in studies that look at the ROI of MBAs, when they look at all MBAs show significantly less returns, but quality is what really matters. So going to a top school is super important. Now, in Asia, one of the things that, we talked about the opportunity here being more prevalent than other part of the world, there's a lot of data that's showing that Asia is going to vastly outperform the rest of the world. McKinsey did a recent study of consumers and executives about their post-COVID expectations, and they're amongst the most optimistic in the world. Asia's been a strategic and proactive leader in managing COVID. There's no dispute over the significance of it, but there's also there's no limitation in how serious they're taking and how proactive they are in managing it. The other point is that North America's corporate 6-month outlook in this McKinsey study, North America was the only region that was worse, had a worse outlook than April 2020, right? And so as India, China, and APAC 6-month outlook improves, North America is down 13%. And if you look who's leading, the chart on the top shows the consumer sentiment, optimistic, pessimistic ratio. So what we did here is we took, McKinsey administered a survey, and they took, there were 3 categories of what survey respondents fell into: optimistic, pessimistic, or in the middle, basically. And so when you look at China, it says the Chinese consumer is 8.7 times, has an optimistic, pessimistic ratio of 8.7. And so what that means is for every 1 person who was pessimistic, there are 8.7 people who are optimistic about the post-COVID future. Indonesia was strong, India is strong. Even America is relatively strong compared to the rest of the developed world. And so if you have a ratio of less than 1, that means that the ratio of less than 1 means you're more pessimistic than optimistic. And so we feel really good about the prospects here in Asia. And so while we're based in Southeast Asia, the spillover effect, the kind of halo effect that China has on the region is undeniable. And so Southeast Asia will be a benefactor of that. And then big economies like India and Indonesia will also have an effect on us as well. So what we want to get to is, why is the Asian market rewarding the MBA? And so for the 4th industrial revolution, there's like 3 buckets of skills that people need to be successful: strong, human-oriented, generic skills like teamwork, communication, and organization. But then you also need some discipline and technical skills. And while we talked about the half-life of this technical skills, shortening, still having that foundation is critical for developing this kind of problem-solving savvy that you can apply across domains. And then personal attributes, confidence, resilience, ambition. And we feel like at ASB, our curriculum is designed to prepare people in all 3 of these different areas. And we believe that like the MBA is ideally suited for what Asia Pacific needs, but we want to understand why they aren't more prevalent. So we conducted a study across a range of industries where our students are, and we found that there was market for our students: tech and innovation, professional services, consulting, financial services, unconventional and other. We conducted interviews with 14 employers with APAC exposure. We did a survey to 250 something HR, business line managers, et cetera. And we wanted to use the qualitative data from the interviews to triangulate with the survey data to get a better sense of what's going on in the region. And so the value and awareness of the MBA is high in Asia. And one of the things when we were designing the study is that we were concerned that Asian schools weren't well regarded. But what we found in the survey respondents is that 70% of the respondents had the same view as Asian MBA programs as they had of other schools in the world. Now, some thought they were better, some thought they were worse, but it was marginal. 10% thought Asian schools were better, 20% thought they were worse, right? So, not really a deciding factor. So we felt like, okay, we're on a level playing field here. The other thing is we were concerned about what is the knowledge level of recruiters when it comes to Asia, to MBAs. Employers generally recognize the general nature of the MBA as different than other degrees for their ability to problem solve and think strategically, right? And so this is a skill that I think was, generally regarded as something that's at a deficit here in Asia. They also recognize that the MBA is a skill set that brings together experiences, work experiences with classroom skills for impact, right? And so they like the maturity, the experience that people bring to the table. But the one thing that was a turnoff for them is that sometimes there's this kind of MBA entitlement. And what they wanted to be clear on is that the credential alone is not enough, all right? And so while when people think about an MBA, one of the things that we hear when we go through the interview process with students is that I need to learn, bone up on my technical skills, finance or accounting or stats. And in Asia, the soft skills are really what are the most distinguishing feature, and they set up well for this age of automation. And the skills that really came out in the qualitative interviews as well as the surveys is our maturity. And so they thought that perspective and experience really gave perspective that drove better decision making. Also problem solving and critical thinking, right? So it's good to have a specific technical skill, but also they wanted individuals who had problem solving skills that were domain agnostic, right? And so that you can apply to many different situations. The other thing that they valued and looked for in MBAs were the ability to communicate and storytell. Really, can you engender buy-in? Can you get people onto your side? That's something that they value as well. And then thinking strategically and understanding the big picture, being able to come up from out of the weeds and be able to really make sense of what the data says, or how do you articulate it to a broader audience to get support. They love the ambition of MBAs, and then the client-centric nature and the ability to put an MBA in front of someone to sell business, articulate value, and things of that nature. So these were these soft skills were really what were the defining features of the what employers were looking at. Now, here's where it gets different in Asia. So MBAs are seen as client-centric creators and problem solvers that help with the growth agenda. And so they're not used in the same scale as, say, in the US. In the US MBA programs, MBAs they've proliferated throughout the organization. So not only are they frontline and salespeople, they're back, they can be in the middle office or back office, optimizing processes. And what you see in this part of the world is that they're not used for every situation. So I put this image here, Army, Rangers, and Navy SEALs to kind of articulate the differential. Both are special forces, there to solve problems, but the Army Rangers are a battalion, right? So they're hired, in much more scale. In Asia, Navy SEALs are for a very specified, small scale kind of problem, specific kind of problem. And so their MBAs in Asia aren't used for every case, right? And so there's a selectivity to how employers seek to select their MBA talent. The other thing is that in this part of the world, one of the things that's limiting the proliferation of MBAs in Asia is that hiring processes are slanted towards domain expertise and prior skill. So this slide here kind of shows how employers select people for interviews in this part of the world. And what you'll notice is that in Asia, it's all about your prior work experience, your prior industry experience. Then we get to proven ability to perform. Whereas in the US, the first thing they look for is your ability to perform in your ceiling, right? And so if you go back to something that I said earlier, in your first job, that's pretty much when you're using domain expertise, right? And as you have success in the company, your next jobs are not really based on your domain expertise, they're based on your general skills. So, myself, a lot of you guys, a lot of MBAs who have been engineers, right? Maybe your first job is engineering oriented, but then your next job is more about your other skills. And so in the US, what's happened in the MBA market, they care about your ceiling more than they care about your prior skill, right? And so Asia is still evolving. This trend is, each year I think it gets a little bit less reliant on industry experience. And I think as a career team, we've done a good job of trying to articulate better the value of a generalist, but it's still a evolving trend here in the region. So one of the things that we've tried to do is respond to the market with a program and a curriculum that really supports getting the generalist in more places. And so at ASB, we try to blend smart and sharp skills through action learning to better meet the needs of the APAC employer community. And so many of you might be saying, smart and sharp, what's that, right? And so colloquially, this is how we refer to soft and hard skills. And soft and hard skills they're coined by the U.S. Army in 1972. And so, soft skills are defined as those that involve actions affecting people, and hard skills are those that are defined as, that are more concrete and tangible. And so what we wanted to do, though, is develop a curriculum that kind of future-proofs our students by helping develop these skills in a way that makes them more impactful and they can hit the ground running. And so when you think of those sharp skills, they provide the knowledge and skill foundation, but smart skills, they really facilitate getting things done. So, the typical sharp skills that people think of with an MBA program: finance, accounting, economics, operation and marketing, etc. But then the smart skills: leadership, communication, creativity, problem solving, managing ambiguity, having a growth mindset or a global mindset, are things that we really actively try to develop here to serve the needs of the client community. And a lot of schools say they effectively do smart skills, but the way we enhance those skills is through our action learning approach to curriculum. It's our key differentiator as a school. It's one of our greatest sources of impact, and it's core to our curriculum. And so our students do projects with our over 120 corporate partners throughout the year across all parts of the world. We've conducted these action learning projects in 26 countries with almost 152 different hosts. And right now we're almost at 300 projects since our inception. And so for schematic ease, I just put up the full-time curriculum, but the pedagogy is also the same for the working professionals. And in our curriculum, what we do is you start off and you take classes. Those are the gray bars on the schematic. And then after you take a few classes, you go on site, the pink bars, to meet with the client and work with them on solving a problem, right? And so, so this really gives us an opportunity to kind of take what you learn in the classroom from a theoretical perspective and apply it on a real world problem. And not only do you get to apply theory, which you'll see in like spring year 1 and spring year 2, you'll also go on site in other parts of Asia. So in spring year 1, maybe your project is in Thailand or Indonesia or Vietnam. And then, in spring year 2, maybe it's in Saudi Arabia or Korea or something along those lines. And then in the summer, we have an individual action learning project, which is effectively, most of you guys would think of it as a summer internship. And then at the end of the program, we have a product development action learning project. And through these different exercises, not only are you learning how to put theory into practice, you're also you're developing a cross-cultural savvy that we think will prepare you to work in the multi-ethnic environment that is Southeast Asia or globally beyond the region. Our fundamental principle is that we believe by 2025, there's going to be 10 times the amount of data in the world today. We can't prepare MBA students based on transferring knowledge. So we have to have this experiential component that's really going to help you learn how to learn so that you learn to do. And so it's almost, we would call this double loop learning theory, right? So in most schools, what you do is you learn based on the outline of the syllabus and the outline of the syllabus, the learning goals for the class and that kind of thing. But what this approach does is that you learn the first loop in the traditional curriculum, but then the double loop is when you've learned how to learn, and then you know how to modify and improve independently of a learning pedagogy, right? And so, so for us, we think, why does action learning work? It's the opportunity to apply smart and sharp skills in a real world situation. The retrieval practice, which we call the testing effect, happens more frequently, right? So if you do 5 action learnings, and then you're on site multiple times in those action learnings, you're having to retrieve the information you learned in the program. So it's baked in and for better retention, right? The learning opportunities too, though, they're spaced and interleaved. So this gives you an opportunity for reflection, for self-learning, and this is more impactful. And the way our faculty engage with our students via action learning is through inquiry panels, which allow us to question and coach as opposed to instruct and tell. And so you can think of faculty as coach instructors as opposed to just standing at the front of a room or using a 20-year-old case study. And what we're seeing through the projects that we do in Action Learning is that, you know, the nature of COVID has caused everyone to revisit their business models and their budget plans in this part of the world. A lot of the projects that we're seeing now are COVID-related projects. How do we change our processes for the COVID-related world? How do we sell into new markets in a COVID-related world, and that kind of thing. And so we're really confident that this is going to have a tremendous impact on you. The evidence has been compelling pre-COVID. You know, our full-time MBA salaries in the Financial Times would rank 52nd in the world, and that's compelling by itself, because that's comparing graduate salaries to alums 3 years after graduation. In our last class, the class of 2019, that was fully placed. We're still in placement process for the class of 2020. Of those 35 students, 14 were placed. Those 35 students were placed in 14 countries across 5 different continents. And so our students are very globally oriented in nature. And not only can you get a job here in Asia and this part of the world, you can also get a job in Europe, the United States, Africa, South America, wherever. The high value add industries, tech and knowledge-based industries, are leading the way in this part of the world. And for those of you who are interested in our working professional program, the initial results from our first class, and we took a survey before the end of the first year, 61% of our students received a promotion, title change, or expansion of responsibilities in the first year of the program. And so that speaks to our ability to kind of make an impact. When we think about the organizations that have made offers to our students, they've been global and diverse. So 100 organizations have made full-time or internship offers to our students. Most of the offers have been large multinationals and regional players, about 57%. But startups have loved the innovative disposition of ASB as well. And about 30% of those kind of companies have hired our students. And then because we have this unconventional ethos of this at the school, NGOs and governmental entities have reached out to us to find students to help, you know, create a more favorable environment so that business and entrepreneurship can thrive. And when you look at where the offers have come from, about 40% of the offers have come from Malaysia. Another 17% have come from ASEAN, excluding Malaysia, another 17% from the rest of Asia, and 26% of the rest of the world. So for those of you guys who may not be sure you want to commit to Asia, but want to get exposure to this part of the world to help you and position you for a return back to Asia as you mature in your career, I think we're a very viable option here. And so this chart just shows the salaries from 2018 to 2019. We look at salaries from a purchase power parity perspective, and that just converts salaries so it can be compared across countries. But then we also have our annual salaries. So $72,000 is our average salary here, which is very good when you consider that, you know, we place such a large amount of students in Southeast Asia and in the emerging world. So we're very happy about that. When you look at where our students are going, I mentioned this early, the tech sector, 52% of our students went into the tech sector. Another 17% went into consulting and professional services. When you look at where people were placed, the slide earlier was about where the offers came from, but the placement kind of also mirrors that as well. And so the emerging world has been great in terms of cost of living. And so, you know, one of the things we always have to help our students to understand is that, you know, $72,000 in Bangkok is probably much better than $95,000 in Hong Kong or Singapore. Now, just wanted to, you know, the numbers are the numbers, but I think the stories are even better. And so these are from the class of, these are some of the recent placements from the class of 2020. CJ, he's went on to a Malaysian startup, and he's the head of product development there. Zoe Tate is a Dutch national who's been living in Malaysia for the last 7 years, and she's actually working with the United Nations Capital Development Fund as a digital innovation specialist here in Malaysia. Jishnu is an Indian student who's working for Anheuser-Busch as a solution consultant in Shanghai, China. Esther is a Korean American. She's working at Biorhythm, which is a pharmaceutical company, and she's working as a marketing and communications manager in Singapore. Rafael is a Spanish national. He's going to be working for Samsung in an MBA rotational program. Ashley is working for a really cool startup in Malaysia, SOCAR, as a chief of staff for the CEO. Alex just happens to also be working in the kind of car space. Clear Motion is an automotive startup based out of Boston, and he's the business and finance op manager. And Kevin is a Kenyan, and he's working for Novo Nordisk, which is a pharmaceutical company, mostly focused on diabetic pharmaceuticals, and he's in their leadership development program. And he'll start in Kenya and rotate to Denmark. And so we've had some great success stories in this most recent class, and they've been really consistent with our prior classes. So Marina was from the class of 2019. She's working for a financial inclusion startup in Malaysia. Huang was actually our graduation day speaker, and at the time he didn't have an offer. And one of our our board of overseers heard his speech and offered him the job to run the digital transformation efforts for Giddy Tire Group in Singapore. Deepika was your traditional engineer who wanted to come to business school to become a business leader. And so she went to work for Microsoft as a program manager in Singapore. And Maksat, he's working as a data products lead for Seek Job Street here in Malaysia. We have some other great stories here. Sherilyn works at Google. Her story was really great because she was going to go work for Gap in their supply chain leadership program in Hong Kong. And then when Gap and Old Navy parted ways, that program disappeared. So we were able to quickly get her a role at Google. Dare and Gary have an interesting story in that they were both on an action learning project, and they wanted to hire these guys. And so Dari went to work for the project, Ananda Development Company. And so Ananda is a Thai real estate developer. And one of the things that we're seeing across Asia is a lot of these well-established companies are trying to develop a tech disposition and take their competencies in their space and productize those in some kind of tech way. And so Dare and Gary's project was kind of the early stages of that. And Dare, he went to go work with them as a strategic business development manager. Gary decided to settle on a firm called McKinsey. He's working in Taiwan, serving the greater China region. And then Clara, you know, she's a Venezuelan American, and she's always wanted to live in Europe, and she was able to secure an opportunity with Amazon in Spain. Now, some of you on this webinar may be from our Working Professionals program, and that program's also yielding transformational results. So we have Raphael Bohm, a German national. He's based in Japan, and he flies here for every session of the Working Professional program. And he's leading the local strategy and promotion efforts for Daiwa still. And then Nick Aisha, she works for Sapura Energy. She's a Malaysian national, and she's she came in as a general manager of the cash management group, and now she's the head of group treasury and investor relations. So the impact is clear for all the students, whether you're in the full-time program or working professional program. One of the things that we try to do as a school is we want the best and the brightest students. As I mentioned earlier, our aspiration is to be the #1 business school in Asia. And so we have a market-leading approach to financial aid. Full-time students are eligible for scholarship, and their application for admission serves as their application for scholarship. Working professionals, because they are working, are eligible for need-based financial aid. And we have packages that range from up to 64% of tuition for Malaysians to 58% of tuition for non-Malaysians. And there's some corporate sponsor support packages from 50,000 to full tuition. We believe that the strong financial aid and salaries lead to strong ROI for the program. And so what we hope is that we can see applications from all you guys. You know, if you're going to apply to the program, we need just the basics: a resume, a cover letter, academic transcripts, an essay, a video statement, 2 recommendations. The GMAT or GRE is optional. It can only help you from a data point perspective, but it's not required. And then, depending on our evaluation of you on the other 7 dimensions, we'll conduct interviews with you as the final stage of the application process. And so our minimum requirements is that, you know, everyone needs a bachelor's degree and 2 years of work experience. Also proof of language proficiency, which means you went to a school where English was the median instruction, or you have some kind of test such as the TOEFL or IELTS that verifies your English standing. We have application deadlines. The first full-time application deadline is October 29th. The last one is April 1st. And then for working professionals, our first application deadline is March 16th, 2021. All right. And the last one is June 16th, 2021. So this is our presentation. We're going to be on the road. So on the 27th, we'll have a virtual event for Latin America and North America. Emily Price and Gulnara, our two of our senior leaders on the admissions team, will be at that event. I'll be out there in Manila for those of you who go in the Philippines. And then on September 2nd, we'll have another virtual event for LATAM and North America. This one will be me and Gulnara. And then if we have any Aussies on here, we'll be in Australia as well, Emily, Fazila, and myself. So with that, we have some questions. I'm going to go to some of the pre-submitted questions that we have, and 1 second. All right. Okay, so is demand in the MBA, will it increase or decrease after COVID? I think in Asia it's going to continue to increase. I think the rate may slow down a little bit, but I also think, you know, here in Asia, it's always been a micro versus a macro employment process for MBAs. And so what does that mean? So when we say micro, that means it's more relational as opposed to big companies coming to campus and hiring, backing up the truck and hiring MBAs. Our approach to careers is very bespoke. So you work with our career team, we expose you to our network, and you know, our career team has a diverse network of individuals. You know, one of the things that stands out about our team is that we have people who have been here through the financial crisis in 2008, all the way to the dot-com bust in 2001. And so we have people here who can help you get to where you need to get to. So someone says, do you really think it's the right time to go for an MBA? So having got my MBA 20 years ago, sometimes the best time to go to an MBA program is in a down market. So what you see is that if you, right now, if you think about the cycle time and think about the operations process, if you start the process now, that's 1 year, and then 2 years. So 3 years from now, for many of you who will apply, we hope the market will be better then. And usually economic cycles, when I showed that slide earlier, at worst, downtimes are only 2 years, right? Global contraction. So if you think about we're a 2-year program and there's 1 year of you know, the application process, you know, I'm pretty confident that we'll have a better market than right now. I think the wrong way to think about it is, let me wait till things get better and then go to school, because you're probably closer to the next down cycle. Someone says, does ASB cater to the oil and gas industry? And so as a small school, I think where we see the most gravity in this region is towards technology, right? But what I would say is that oil and gas, so one of the things that we've done the last couple of years is we've had treks to Dubai in order to gain access to employers in that part of the world, and that's an oil-rich region. You know, we've had employers who are looking for you know, people with oil and gas and extraction industry background. And so I think there's the opportunity to get employed here. I used to work in Houston for 8 years. And so I would say, like, for me, so like if you were to come here, I'd probably be assigned to you as a career coach, because I have networks and connections in this part of the world. So a lot of my students who have, you know, went on to have global careers are based in Singapore. So I think we have the ability to help someone interested in the oil and gas industry get there. So someone says they're curious about ASB professor credentials to show they can coach us through real world complex situations in action learning, right? And so I would say like our coaches now have been doing action learning for multiple cycles, right? And so their real world experience. So sometimes I think there's this misperception that if you've worked as a corporate person, you have real world experience versus a faculty member who comes from a top-notch school. And so one of the things that I challenge people with on that is that sometimes like a real world coach is someone who has specific industry experience, right? And what gets discounted with our faculty is like through their research, what they're looking at is an array of industries in order to kind of come up with the findings in their research. And so they can apply their learnings in multiple different contexts. And so while they may be academic, it doesn't mean they're less real world. The other thing is through the action learning process, we have academic faculty on it, and we also have business coaches. So we have a good mix of people to support the students through the project process. Let's see. So there's a question about application fee. There is no application fee for ASB's MBA program, all right? Let's see, a couple other questions. I think the value of the MBA, someone asked about that. I hope that this presentation got to it. I think if there's a place where the MBA is most valuable long-term, it's in Asia. You know, the rate of salary growth is significantly greater out here. What are the most needed vacancies? Anything related to technology, I think, is going to be key. And that doesn't mean you have to be a super coder or something like that. It's, you know, there can be very humanistic oriented career paths that relate to how humans and technology interface, right? And so that would be some of the coaching I give people. How are Asian Malaysians poised to recover from the pandemic? And again, I think it's a good skill set. So when I work with our students on their resumes, because of action learning, we're able to add 5 different experiences to their resume, right? And so we're able to come up with themes and such that, you know, articulate to the market the value that people can provide. And so when we actually, you know, revise people's resumes after the end of the first year and the summer internship, the resumes are, I think, incomparable compared to students from other MBA programs. Our specifics, you need some, so someone says becoming a generalist also means you need specific areas of mastering. How deep and how far have generalists come in mastering those subjects? So first, I think that just because we're preparing you with a generalist skill set doesn't mean we don't provide you an opportunity to go deeper in particular areas, right? And so we have elective offerings, right, that we have that, you know, if you wanted to learn more about, you know, data analytics and things of that nature, we have courses on that. We also have courses on, say, marketing and digital marketing and such, and you can dig in deeper on that. The other thing is through the action learning program that the piece of versatility that I think is great is that the projects also serve almost the same purpose as electives, right? So every semester you get to bid on the projects that you're looking for, right? And so if we have like enough projects for 15, if we need 15 projects, usually we put 20 out there to bid, and students allocate points to their top, you know, priorities. And 90% of the time, students get one of their top 3 choices. So I think the other questions, there was a question about how do you see Islamic financing growing in the region? Is ASB ready to capitalize on that market? So I would say like I think our students are well positioned to capitalize on many different markets, right? We have an Islamic Finance Institute that's also part of Bank Negara, NCF. And so the way things work here in this part of the world, our career strategy is not like, you know, hey, we have a bunch of Islamic financing institutions who are going to come here and hire ASB students. What we do is we sit down and talk to you, and this goes back to the micro versus macro hiring process here, is we say, hey, such and such, if you're interested in Islamic financing, we figure out, okay, what are the kind of roles that you want to do? What elements of Islamic finance do you want to get to? Then we look in our network and say, hey, we're going to work to connect you with people in the Islamic financing space. Because Malaysia is Islamic country, has a large Islamic presence, and also because, Bank Negara has, interest in, seeing Islamic financing becoming a larger area of finance. I think there's the ability for us to connect individuals who are interested in this area. All right, we got 5 minutes left. Well, I'm checking for other questions. So someone asked, can it be confirmed if I can avail a scholarship? All of our full-time students are eligible for scholarship, and our working professional students are eligible to apply for need-based scholarship. And we don't discriminate whether you have 25 years of experience or 2 years of experience. So for someone who wishes to make a finance career in Asia, why would they consider ASB or Malaysia, for that matter, if Singapore is a much better option? Singapore is a great option, right? One of the things I can say, we're launching a Masters of Finance, a Masters of Central Banking program. And so that central banking program is allowed us to bring on a lot of world-class finance faculty to ASB. And as part of that program, we're also going to have world-class finance faculty teaching that program, which I don't think any school in Singapore can potentially match with us. So I think that's one element of it. I think as a finance hub with corporate finance and such, I think, Singapore, probably has that over Malaysia. But again, I think if it's not the way the hiring process works in this part of the world. Those companies don't just go to MBA schools. It's a macro hiring process, right? And so for someone who is, if someone has a plan and is committed, we can help anyone get anywhere. So how would an MBA from ASB help a person start or run their own business? And so this is a great question. I think the whole problem-solving nature of our action learning curriculum teaches you, how to figure out and use skills in different kind of settings, right? So, if you were an entrepreneur, you could do like 5 different action learnings here at ASB. And as an entrepreneur, you're not in a specialist track. It's the ultimate generalist kind of role. So I feel like that's why our curriculum is well tailored for it. One of the things we have is an entrepreneurship center, in which we're trying to make more connectivity between the entrepreneurial community in this part of the world. If you go on the blogs of our website, we have a couple of features of entrepreneurs and they talk about how the ASB MBA has really changed how they think about things and how they approach and capitalize on opportunities. So one question, does ASB provide accommodation support services for international students? In fact, all full-time students are required to stay on campus. It's included in the tuition. Those residential blocks that I showed you earlier are nice and state-of-the-art, better than any dorms I think you can find in Asia. So four more questions, 4 minutes. Last call for questions. But I'd really like to thank you. Oh, I got one new question. Yeah, so for someone asked about accommodation for married kids, and so we're a very supportive organization of family. In our housing, our residential housing, we have 2- and 3-bedroom flats, and those are, we determine for folks with family, whatever your need is based on the number of dependents, that's how we determine your housing, right? So if you have, 1 kid or 2 kids, we give you 2 bedrooms. If you have 3, you have 3 bedrooms, etc. Right? And so, someone asked about work permit laws in Malaysia for international students. I don't think work permits are the issue here in Malaysia that they are in, say, a place like Singapore, right? So like what you have going on in Singapore right now is that you have to post a job and make sure there are no locals for a particular job. Here, it's not the same way. So if there's a fit between the skill set and what the company is looking for, then they just have to go through the process of, going through the visa process and such. So again, so someone asked about language barriers here, and this is where I think Southeast Asia stands out from Hong Kong and North Asia. So Southeast Asia, ASEAN has 700 million people, and there's no one language that predominates, right? And so for international students, English is sufficient here. And I feel like the prospects here and the range of opportunities that my students have been exposed to here were greater than the range of opportunities that they were exposed to in Hong Kong. So I hope that gives you a sense of the kind of opportunity here. Malaysia, as a former British colony, has a much higher level of English, right? And so, and especially in Kuala Lumpur. Again, I would say the level of English here, for someone who's been in Asia, I never have been pushed to have to not speak English, right? And I'm disappointed by that. I'd love to have been, pushed to try to learn another language, but, English is sufficient here, so. So someone asked, why did I make the shift from the US to a country like Malaysia? So I went to Hong Kong first, but I would say my transition to Malaysia was easier than my transition to Hong Kong, right? So I don't know if you guys, follow sports, but, someone was talking to Pele about, what made him great as a soccer player, right? And his response was like, basically, others are chasing the ball. I'm going to where the ball is going to be. And I think for those of you guys who are trying to go to where the ball is going to be in the business world, Asia is the place. I think what was really appealing about Malaysia, when you work in Hong Kong and Singapore, those places are such bubble entities, right? You're not really on the front line of Asia. And so I felt like, from a professional development standpoint, being on the frontier of Asia, on the front line, that's what Malaysia brought, the authenticity of how business is really done out here instead of managing from an ivory tower. And then I got here and I was like, well, Malaysia is an awesome place. Everybody who's come here to visit us was like, wow, there's more cranes here than anywhere in the US. So I think we're at time. Really appreciate your calls. If you weren't sure about connecting with me on LinkedIn or sending me an email, I'm going to put this back up. We hope to connect with you. Feel free to schedule a call with me or someone from the admissions team. There's a schedule a call link on our admissions page. We'd love to talk to you more about the program. Thank you, guys.